Hello and welcome to another instalment of my C# for Beginners series. In this one we're going to look at creating variables and setting data types, what they are, how we do it, and then how we can use those variables after that. If you haven't yet chosen yourself an IDE, on the blog post here, which I will link in the description, there is another link to my Beginners series with a full list of all the tutorials in this series. So what is a variable? At a technical level, it's an area in memory. We say that we sort of reserve an area in memory, we give it a name, give it a label, and when the program sees that name, it knows it needs to look in that place in memory. However, it's probably easier just to think of a variable as a box with a label on it on a shelf. And we can put something in that box and we can see what it is because of the label, therefore we can go and easily retrieve the contents. Unlike a box in the physical world, however, it can only carry one type of thing, so we can't have a box that has knives, forks, plates, pans. It can be a box of knives. Obviously we're talking about data types because this is programming, not knives. And there are lots of data types in C#. We're going to focus on just 3 of them today. Strings, which are text, integers, which are whole numbers, such as 10, 5, -50, -1000, 2 million, and decimal numbers, which are doubles, and that's 5.1, 2.9, -10.245, etc. For the purposes of this tutorial series, you can consider those to be any whole number or any decimal number. In actual fact, there are limits and the links are in the blog post, and we can see all the different types of whole number variables and the floating point variables, of which doubles are 1, and you can see all the different ranges available. At this stage they're not really relevant, I just want you to be aware that they are actually there. Okay, so let's look at actually declaring a variable and how we do that. So when we need to declare a variable in C#, the first thing we need to do is start by giving it a type. So if I start with a string type, I'll type string. The second point I'm doing is giving it a name. And all that has done is reserved a space in memory, given it a label, so the program knows where to look for this in the future. And I could do the same with integer. Int is the short version of integer. It's always int in C#. Again, my integer name is just a variable name. And lastly, if I do double, my double variable. All we've done is declared those, reserved our space in memory to put something in them. The next stage is actually to assign a value to that. So I might do, notice I've only typed part of it, then I'm going to cursor down, do my string variable, equals, quotation marks. Anytime we're defining text, it always goes in quotation marks. So I've just set that to be my name. I'm ending the line with a semicolon. Almost every line in C# ends with a semicolon unless it's a multi-line instruction, and then it's at the end of the instruction, so it's every instruction. I could do the same with my integer, so my integer variable, equals sign. This time, because we're assigning a number, we don't need to put quotation marks. And my double variable, 5.5, again no quotation marks. In case you haven't noticed, I am using VS Code for this particular demo, but we'll also be taking quick looks at Visual Studio and Rider. I'm going to keep switching between IDEs in this series because I just want to show how easy it is actually to swap between them and to work with any of them. Okay, now this is all fine and we can do this, but typically, unless you need to define it and then assign it later, what you'll see actually is it's not done like that usually. What you'll find, if you know it's a fixed value to start with, you'll see it all done in one line. Now, I'm hoping you've also noticed that these are underlined in yellow, and typically an underline isn't something you should ignore. This is the IDE telling you that there is a problem or potential problem with your code. And when I've hovered over that, it's telling me that the variable, my double variable, is assigned, but its value is never used. When you first start writing a program, that's perfectly expected. However, if you've written a lot of code and you've created a variable and never used it, there's a good chance it's not needed, especially if that program is finished. If you've never used that variable, either you've made a mistake because you've intended to use it, or actually you don't need it and you can just delete it. So it is really useful information, and you can get that just by hovering over it. Right, so let's have a look at how we might use some of these variables then. We've already seen the console.writeLine in previous videos, so if I do a console dot, and notice I'm not writing out all this code, I'm using what the IDE offers. Right, so, and I do my string variable. Now I'm going to run this code, so run, start, we don't need debugging this time. Okay, so its output must pain. That's because it's taken what we've stored in here, and when I've said I want to output here, it's output the contents. Let's just compare that. If I put a pair of quotation marks around that, it will no longer output the variable my string or the contents of that variable. It will just output a piece of text that says my string. And I could do exactly the same. Why hasn't that gone away? Right, so let's have a look at another. So I could do console.writeLine, my integer variable, and console.writeLine, my double variable. And if I now run that, we can see we now have all three output. You may have also noticed that the errors underlined have gone away. In an ideal world, that would have happened before I ran it. It's why I paused and said, why hasn't it gone away? Because I knew it should, and it has done now we've run it. This is a little issue with VS Code. It's not huge, and remember VS Code is free, completely free, and it's multi-platform, so you can use it in place of Visual Studio or in place of Rider. But there are odd little quirks sometimes. Just to show you the difference, I've copy pasted those three variables into Rider. The console.writeLine, my string variable, and you can see that it's vanished straight away. I've done exactly the same in Visual Studio now, and again, if I do a console.writeLine, we can see that this has instantly removed that. Okay, so VS Code is not quite as good, but actually it's really pretty good to say it's completely free and available on any operating system. And I'm going to keep highlighting some of these little differences as we go. One of the next things I want to point out, and I'm going to bring the web page back across, is that we really can't mix variables. We can't add a string to an integer because it doesn't make sense. It's like saying, what's an apple take away an orange? There's no sensible answer. What's a house plus a car? Doesn't make sense. Neither does text plus a number. However, there are some things that are done through automatic conversions, and let's just have a look at some of those now. So, let's have a look at this one first. So we've got a double variable there, and we've got a string variable here. And I've just told you that we can't do that, but it's not objecting. Why is that? Well, let's have a look at it the other way around first. That one doesn't like it. Let me put them both on the screen for you at once. So why does it like this one, but not this one? And the reason is because of the type here. This one is a double and this one is a string. This isn't really adding them together. What C# is doing is it's trying to be intelligent. And it's saying, well, I've got a double, but I know how to represent that number as a string. And then this isn't actually adding them, it's what they call concatenating them, which is joining two strings together. Whereas in this case, it's saying, I'm trying to make a number that we can do some maths with, and you're trying to tell me I need to add a string to that. Oh, I don't know how to turn that piece of text. I don't know how to turn I am Ms. Payne into a number, so I can't add them together. Let me just close that one down. So if I run this now, that outputs that. If I change it to my double variable, it will just output 5.5. And now let's try that one. And you see, all it's done, it's turned this here into text and literally joined or concatenated them together. Now, I'm going to take a better look at that with a better example now. So, this is the only maths operator we can use with a string. If I try to do a minus, it won't work. If I try to divide, it won't work. Multiply, it won't work. Because it's not really doing maths. What it's actually doing is just joining and concatenating them. Right, so if I put full name in here, notice I'm never typing these out in full. I'm just using the help that the IDE gives me. Now let's see if we get what you expect. Let me run that. Oh, did you expect that? Now we haven't added a space in here. All we've done is join them. What I can do though is put another plus sign in and a space like that. So it's the first name, then we're going to join it onto another string, which is just a space, followed by the string last name. So let's run that again. There we go. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the operators, because before we go any further, if you're not aware, there are differences between what you see in maths and what you see in coding. Let's start with divide. In coding, it's a /, not this symbol here. Multiply is the asterisk symbol, or that's the one above the number 8. The / is the one just to the left of the shift key. This is assuming you're using a UK keyboard, a British keyboard. If it's not, then maybe in other locations. Add and subtract are exactly the same. Right, so let's take a look at doing some maths. So let's set an integer. Integer num 1 equals 5. Integer num 2 we'll set that to 6, just to make sure they're different. And integer num 3 equals num 1 plus num 3. Oops, num 2 even. Now, again, I'm going to just bring across a different IDE to do this in a different IDE, because I want to show you how you get slight differences in behavior sometimes. Again, I'm going to bring across Rider. Num 3 equals num 1 plus num 2. Have you noticed what this has done? It's automatically added spaces to make it more readable. Visual Studio will do exactly the same thing. It's just one of those other little differences with VS Code. It won't automatically add those spaces in for you. That code will still run in exactly the same way. It's just about helping you to keep things more readable. Alright, so if I do a console.writeLine here, we'll get exactly what you expect really. Console.writeLine, oops, num3. It's output 11. That was probably exactly what you might expect. However, things can get a little bit funnier when we start doing division. Let's try doing a divide instead. Have a look. What do you think might come out of this? Zero. The reason for this is that it's taking it to the nearest integer number. And when we have an integer number, it is always rounded, taken down to the nearest whole number. It's not mathematically rounded. It just takes all the bits after they're a decimal point and just completely discards them as if they don't exist. And we're going to look at mixing doubles and integers shortly. But just to show you that multiply would work exactly as we expect. And so would subtract. It is just the minus because that 5 divided by 6 doesn't create a nice whole number. Oh, did I put debugging on? Yeah, okay. Right. We'll look at casting down to inches a little bit more shortly. So, what about if we combine doubles and integers then? So we'll stay with that 5. But now we'll make a double. Num2 equal to 5.5. Now, this is where we're going to have to be careful, because if I do an integer, num3 equals num1 plus num2, why doesn't it not like that? Integer number 4 equals number 1 plus number 2. Ah, so it's actually telling me. That's in, this is, the IDEs do help you. These messages will look a little bit confusing at first. But it's helping. It's saying it cannot implicitly convert type double to type integer. An explicit conversion exists. Are you missing a cast? And what that's saying is that if I try and create an integer, we're going to lose information, as in this 0.5 here is going to be lost. So one thing I can do is to put a bracket around the whole lot. Along with an integer in front of it. So that's going to take the result of that and cast it to an integer, and it likes that now. So if I run this at this point, I'll start debugging again. It won't matter. Oh, I'm not outputting anything. Whoops. Console.writeLine num3. Okay, so it's done the 5, it's done the 5, and it's discarded the 0.5. Now, If I reverse that and I make that a double num3, I don't need this. And the reason is C# knows how to convert, num1, which is an integer of 5, into a double. It can represent 5 as a double without losing any information. So that just becomes like 5.0, for example. So now this one will work. So this is another implicit conversion. Right, so we've done both of those. Done that one. Oh yeah, one thing I do want to do, just to show you it doesn't matter and what a casting does. So if I set down a double S1 equals 1.1, double decimal 2 equals 1.5, and double decimal 3 1.9. Because if we were doing mathematical rounding, that would round down, these two would both round up. However, if I do an integer num1 equals, and then I'm going to cast to an integer by putting integer in front of it, then I'm going to put S1, integer num2, cast to an integer, and then I'm going to do S2, integer num3, I'm going to cast to an integer, and I'm going to des3, console.writeLine num1, just copy pasting those lines, because then I can just change those single characters like that and watch what happens. In all three cases, we've just got an output of 1. So in 3 lots of 1. Now, I didn't actually know it did that output like that. I'm just going to copy that code across into Rider and across into Visual Studio so you can see the difference. And again, if I just switch across to Visual Studio, copy paste in that code. And remember that in Visual Studio it starts a little bit differently. It will open up a window, but we've still got the 3 outputs like that. Okay. So we've covered integer division, as in dividing 2 integers. We've covered doubles and combining with text. That pretty much wraps up this video on creating and using variables and some of the intricacies of some of the basic data types. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been helpful. Bye for now.